What's up everyone? Welcome to video 1 of the Start with the Basics YouTube channel. In this video I will walk you through how you can make your own leather duffel bag. This was a video that my man Sherman behind the lens there and I put together a while ago for an online learning platform that didn't end up going anywhere. So we figured why not just throw it on YouTube. Apologies in advance, it does get a little shaky at times and the aspect ratio is a little off because it was meant for mobile. It's quite literally the first video that Sherman and I put together. But we figured the content was still good, so we throw it on YouTube and just see what happens. So I will walk you through, not how to sew it on this one, but that machine over there, which is called a walking foot. So it's meant for a little bit heavier duty things. And that's pretty well it. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. Thanks very much and good luck.
What's up guys? My name is Say Campbell and I'm a self-taught clothing and accessories designer from Vancouver, Canada. My love for fashion came early, driven by a knack to just want to make things. And in this graphy, I'm going to show you how you can make something of your own, a leather duffel bag. In the following chapters, I'll show you what materials you need to get started, give you some basics on pattern drafting, show you how to prepare everything before sewing, and walk you through every step of the process on how to put it together. Let's get started.
Alright guys, so in this chapter I'm going to show you what materials you need to put together your very own leather duffel bag. So jumping right in, the first thing you'll need is 5 zippers, 2 clips, 2 D-rings, 1 center bar, and 9 sets of snaps. One thing to note for your zippers, this guy here, for the main compartment zipper, if you do have the option, get a 2-way zipper, so one that has 2 heads. It's not necessary, but I do find it is nice to have that little bit of extra play. Lengthwise, you're talking 31 inches for the main compartment zipper. If it's a little bit bigger, that's totally fine. For the outer pockets, one here and one here, you're going to need zippers that are at least 9 inches long. For the interior, so there's 2 pockets, interior mesh pockets, that snap to the inside lining here. So for these, you're going to need 2 10-inch zippers. Now, if you have zippers that are a little bit longer, that's totally okay. In the next chapter, I will show you how you can actually cut zippers down to make them fit. For the hardware, we're going to be using 1.5-inch webbing, so make sure that you get hardware that is at least 1.5 inches wide. And one extra note about hardware, it's always good to make sure you test it before you end up buying it, because the last thing you would want is that you buy all this stuff and then you figure out that this is either too small or this is either too big and they don't actually clip through. This is a center bar, so this is what will make the shoulder strap adjustable. So a nice little option to have. And then these are what are called primp snaps. So they all have a cap and a base. The base are what will snap to the bottom of the mesh pack, or sorry, the mesh pouch. And then these 4 caps will go on each side of the exterior. So that's the hardware. Let's move on to the trim. Alright guys, so next we have the trim. So the first thing will be the webbing. Now this is 1.5-inch webbing, which I find to be a good size for a bag about this big. So you're going to need a few different lengths. You're going to need 44 inches for the handles, so you need that twice, so 88 total. One for this side, one for this side. You're going to need 55 inches for the shoulder strap. And then you're going to need another 5 for where the D-ring moves. And the reason I say 5 is that you're going to have a little tail, which I find to be a good thing, because you never really want to get too close to the sewing line, just because over time of constantly pulling on it, you never want it to actually rip through. So 5 and 5 for a total of 10. So 88 plus 55 plus 10 is 153 inches. So that's about how much webbing you're going to need. This is called binding. So binding will be what's on the inside here. So binding is the final thing you're going to close the inside of the bag with, and what that does, it just cleans up any kind of messing sewing lines and then hides it really nicely. So Not really a deal breaker if you don't have it. I just find it is nicer to have if you want to make like a nice completed product. Last of the trim will be the foam. So if you can get something about 1/4 inches wide, thicker or slimmer doesn't really matter. It's just nice to have some foam on the shoulder pad here, that if the bag is really heavy, it's good to have that extra pad in there. Okay, that's it for trim. Now let's move on to the material. Alright guys, so now let's go over the main material you need for this. So because this is a leather bag, some nice leather. This is a really nice camo printed leather I found. This is about 3 ounces. I recommend something about that heavy for any bag width. This is cow's hide that's been printed over with, so you can see it's got a really cool pattern on top. So this is the leather. The lining, so this is nylon pack cloth. Any kind of woven material will be fine for lining. I just find this to be very, very durable. So if you can get it, find some nylon. If not, any kind of strong woven material will be just fine. So this is the lining. Last thing is mesh. So this mesh will be what make up the front part of the interior mesh pockets. So nice, you can see it's got a little bit of stretch and room, so always good to have, and it's breathable, right? So if you end up using the little pouches for dirty laundry or something like that, it's nice to have something that has a bit of breathing room. All right guys, so that's it for the material. Alright guys, so in this chapter I'm going to show you how you can draft your very own pattern to put together your leather duffel bag. So the first thing you'll need is obviously some paper. Now you can see here I have a couple different kinds, so it really doesn't matter what kind of paper you have access to. This is just regular painter paper that I bought from a local hardware store. I do find it is nicer to use stuff that's a little bit thicker because if you use your pattern multiple times, it will be nice to have something that's a little bit more resilient. Next thing would just be a pencil and some eraser. This is called a grid ruler. So if you just look up grid ruler, this is something important to use for measuring, one, but also to draw in all the seam allowances that I'll explain next. This is really nice because it breaks up all the different spacing into 1/8 increments. So as mentioned previously, one thing to note when you're drafting is what's called seam allowance. Now, if you look at the different lines here, a seam allowance essentially acts as this allowance outside of the sewing line that you have for the needle and thread to actually bite to something. So in my experience, all bags and accessories I've made, we use a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. So when you do all of your measurements, what you're going to do after is line up 1/4 inch here, just like that to the edge. And then just going over the line I've already drawn. So what that shows is that you're gonna sew to this line and it'll have a 1/4 inch of clearance outside of the actual stitching line. Now for the all outer ridges of the bag, you're gonna do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and anything touching the zipper, so you can see these ones here, I've actually done at 3/8. So if you measure it up, you see there's 3/8. And the reason for that, I find anything touching a zipper, it's just better to have a little bit more room, one. And the way that we are actually going to put this bag together, we're going to use 1 1/4 inch wide zippers. So just for the clearance, you have to account for the actual space, which is about 1/2 inch. If we draft all the seam allowances at 3/8 inch, you're going to have a nice 1/2 inch space to make up where the zipper will end up. So that is seam allowance. Another thing to note will be the notches. So you can see all these little notches here. Notches, and these actually little holes as well, they act as sewing guides. So, you know, on paper you can see everything lines up, but when you're actually sewing, it's just gonna be a material, right? And it's just gonna have this little nick, so as you're sewing along, you have an idea of how everything is lining up and if you need to compensate accordingly. So that is notches. And the last thing, it's very, very important. You can see, I'm sorry my printing is so bad, but once you start going through and drafting everything, it's very important to label all of your pieces because you can see here, some of these look kind of similar white. So the last thing you would want to do is start sewing something and realize that piece is actually meant to be part of something else. So very important to label. And that's everything you need to know before you get started. Okay, now let's move into the different panels. All right guys, so the very first panel we're going to draft will be the main body panel, which is this big guy right here. Now, this piece is this entire panel on the bag, and you can see these little ears here, or it actually fold down on the edge here, and then give that little bit of extra room for the zipper to go through. So that's the body panel there. And one thing to remember is that this is actually, it's only one piece that you have to draft, but it actually makes up 4 different pieces on the bag. So you have the 2 body panels, right? And then it's also going to make up the lining, because it's the exact same side on both sides. The interior lining will be this piece as well. So just to save yourself time and just for accuracy's sake, it's always a good idea to just make as few pieces as possible, because anything symmetrical, you want to make sure that it's as close to exact as possible. So that's the body panel. Next will be the bottom panel, so that's this piece right here. And this, you can guess, will make up the bottom panel right here. So this will sew to the main body panel on both sides. And same with the, basically all the other pieces. You're gonna draft one piece, but it will be the exterior panel as well as the lining panel as well. So that's the bottom. Okay, so the next piece is the side bottom. So that's this piece right here. You can kind of see it's like a curved trapezoid almost. Now this piece will be what goes here. So it actually attaches to the main body panel, and then is the flap that goes down. So there's one piece here, but it makes up 1, and then the lining on the other side, which is 2. Same thing on the other side, 3 and 4. So it's actually going to be one piece that you draft, but it will make up 4 different pieces on the bag. Alright, now moving on, we have the outer pocket panel. So this is a more direct trapezoid looking shape. And this will be the piece that goes in between the webbing handles there. So there's 1 and 2, and then that will be the outer panel. So this will also make up the lining because it's the exact same size. So this is the exterior pocket panel, or the outer pocket piece. Alright, so now the interior pocket, on the inside of this bag here, there are these removable pouches that I made that will act as either like a toiletry or a dirty laundry pouch. So that's this piece right here, and then you can see it has the snaps that actually snap to the inside of the lining here. So these are the caps for the snap, and then these are the snaps on the inside, so it'll be nice and it'll be in line with the bag. So that's what these 2 pattern pieces are for. So you can see they're very similar in the shape and dimensions to the outer pocket panel, but these ones are a little bit different, so that's why it's very important to label the pieces. So this is the back, right? This is the back of the pocket, so this is the interior pocket back. This this piece right here. And then this is the front, which is made up of mesh, so you get a little bit more room and breathability. So these are the two pieces for the interior pocket. Alright, and the very last thing you're going to draft will be the shoulder pad here. So that's what all these three pieces are. So this tiny little guy is for the foam. So get a little bit of softness if it's heavy and sitting on your shoulder. It's nice to have a little bit of foam there to make that softer. This piece will make up the main compartment piece, so it'll be the outer material as well as the lining. And then this is the little piece that will fold in and then go like that. That way it'll give the ability to be slidable with the webbing underneath. And that's it, guys. So those are all of the pieces you'll need in order to put together your bag. Let's move on. Guys, welcome to the prep work chapter. So now that the pattern's done, we can move ahead and start prepping all the materials and hardware that we had to start actually putting this bag together. So jumping right in, the first thing we're going to work on is the zippers. Now, as mentioned previously, it's ideal if you can get the zippers that are the exact lengths that you need. So 31 inches for the top, 9 inches for the exterior pocket, and then 10 inches for the interior pocket. I unfortunately did not have the right length of zippers, so all of these are a little bit longer, which is okay. If you're in the same boat as me, we can actually cut them down. Now, if you do have the right zipper lengths, then you can skip past a few of these pages and then move on to the rest of the stuff that I'll go over. For those that do have zippers that are too long, the first one we're going to work on is the top zipper. Got a measuring tape, and then we're going to measure out 31 inches from the top all the way to the bottom here. Here's a little bit of drafting chalk. It's good to have so you can mark exactly what your lines are. So we're going to go top to 31 inches here. Mark a little line there. And then if you can see here, all right, so go here. And then you want to go about an inch past the 31 inch mark. And you can see that there's two little lines there. And you're going to put that on the bottom as well, just to make absolutely sure that that's the measurement you're going for. There we go. Put that in. Now we're gonna cut this little bit here. So what I like to do is I like to bend this little bit just to give it a little bit of room there. Just take some good sharp scissors and we're gonna carefully cut into the bit here. And this we can just get rid of. Now, one thing to remember, this was meant for a jacket. So it's a two-way zippers that opens butt to butt. So what we actually want to do is go head to head. So we're going to take these pulls out, and then you can see there's these zipper stops here. We're actually going to pry those off and then switch the head around. So these are called diagonal pliers. You can get them at anywhere hardware store, and these will be handy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to dig the teeth just under one of the ends there, so you can take one off there and save that one here. So don't throw these away. We're actually going to use these later on. So put those to the side. Okay, so now that this one's here and then we pulled that one off, we're actually going to have both of these go in so the heads meet, which will make it a head-to-head zipper. So you can see here that the left side has the one zipper tooth on top. So when you're putting this together, you want to make sure that that is the tooth that is on top. So just line up your thing and then you're just going to gently pull to make sure. Then I was pretty lucky, you can see that that was the first tooth that linked, so that one's good like that. And we're gonna do the exact same thing on the other side, so turn it around. So you can see here, same as before, it's the left tooth, my left tooth, that's the first one. So we're just gonna line it up. And then you're just gonna push down on the butt a little bit, and then you can see here that it's pulled through, so we're gonna pull all of this down, and then now we have the right head-to-head zipper, which will be meant for a bag. Okay, next what we're gonna do is that you can see this is where I cut it, but this is where the actual zipper wants to come to. So what we're gonna pull this out like this, and we're gonna take the diagonal zippers and actually cut these teeth off. So you wanna get the edge of the plier right up against the corner of the tape there. Now make sure that you're only cutting into the teeth and not the actual tape, because if you damage the tape, it's actually going to make it harder to sew down. So ideally, you just want to get as close as you can to the edge and just pull that off. You can see there, just like that. And then for anything that's still stuck like that, we're just going to dig our teeth into the grooves there, and then they'll just slowly start to come off. So this will take a little bit of work, so I would recommend actually getting an extra zipper just to be able to work on and test this. So you don't actually ruin the zipper that you need for the bag. So we're just gonna go all the way through, just like this, just like this. Now you can see that here I've actually come past the chalk line a little bit because we're gonna put in a stop there. So the zipper won't come off. Now, if you don't have any extra stops or anything like that, that's totally okay. You can just sew that line back and forth a bunch of times. That I'll show you once we get to sewing the bag together. So that side's done, so we're just gonna go to the other side here. And then you can see here, oh, I actually went a little bit too far. There's one extra tooth, so we're very carefully gonna take that extra tooth here like this, so they all match up nicely. Just like that. So you can see if it closes like that, and there's still a little bit of room that you can put the stop in. So that is the top zipper. We'll clean up here. We'll do the two exterior zippers. So again, these are separating zippers. You can see by the thing on the bottom there, but we're gonna make these into closed end. So we're gonna measure out 9 inches this time. This, and we're gonna go an inch past that, so the 10-inch mark, and then we're gonna go like this to do the top and the bottom, and then just to save time, we're just gonna line up the other zipper like that, and then we're just gonna have this line carry over to go all the way down. There we go. It's the same. We're gonna take it apart. Take it apart. Now with these heads, you don't need to do anything with. So just like this. So the nice thing about this tool, I do recommend buying higher quality tools, especially with the pliers, because it does make a difference when you're cutting into the zippers. Okay, so that's one there. Alright, so for the last two zippers, these two are for the interior mesh pocket, and they both need to be 10 inches. So we're going to measure. past the white line, I'd say about 1/4 of an inch, just like that. Deal here. Okay. And then those are those 2 zippers there. A little bit of room. Okay, so now you can see that all of these have been cut down. And then what we're gonna do is just carefully go and then pull this back so they line up. Make sure not to do it too quickly because you don't want it to pull the zipper off, so just like that. Now we're gonna put all of these zip ends on. I use a supplier called Ohio Travel Bag to get all the ends. If you don't have access to that, that's totally fine. You can just run a sewing line back and forth. Again, I'll show you how to do that once we get into the sewing chapter. Before then, these are little zip ends that you can buy. We wanna make sure that it's nice and snug right up against the teeth there. So this will prevent the pull from coming off of the tape. So we're gonna have one here just like this. And we're gonna turn them over and then just use the pliers to push them all down. So these are needle nose pliers. Again, you can get them at any hardware store, and we're just gonna push these teeth down so they don't come undone. So now you can see these won't come undone. Go right against there, just like that. Okay, and that is it for these zippers. Alright guys, next is the material. So first thing we'll do, just to get it out of the way, will be the little bit of foam. So this is the pattern piece for the foam, which will go into the shoulder strap. So this, you just go all the way around. I'll just quickly cut that out. Now it's important to remember to cut on the inside of the whatever line actually you're using. This chalk is a little bit thicker going around just to make sure the lines are defined. So we want to make sure that we're on the inside of whatever line you're drawing, just so it doesn't get too big. Okay, that's it for foam. I'm gonna unroll it. So the first length we need is for the shoulder strap, which is 55 inches. About 55 inches. So this is for the shoulder strap. Cut it there. Next, we're gonna do the 2 handles. So that's 44 inches times 2. So we're gonna 2 at 44 inches. what I do, just to make sure that both sides are exactly the same, you actually just two handles. Now, one thing to note, because there's actually the sewn handle and the regular handle, we're going to measure out the center. Measure out the center. That's the center there. And then we're going to measure out 10 inches from each side. Actually, wait a second. It's 20-inch handle, yeah, so 10 inches off of the center on each side. And then these markings mark where you sew the handle to. The handles, and then we're going to do two 5-inch marks. So this is what the D-rings we're going to go over. Like that. Then we're just gonna put everything back. Okay, now you can see it, this is a little bit frayed, so we're just going to take this, because this is synthetic, we're just going to melt all the edges here, so that doesn't start fraying when we're trying to sew everything together. Alright, so now that these zippers and trim are ready to go, we are going to move on and cut out all of the material. So first things first, we're going to do the leather. So this is a really nice item, I'm really excited to cut this out. Had my eye on this for a while, so I'm pretty excited that I actually have a reason to cut it out. Okay, so here are all the pattern pieces that you've cut out now. So keeping in mind, one thing to know when we're doing this, you want to kind of find an area, because leather is essentially a skin, it's not consistent all the way down, you can kind of see different textures and stuff. So this is your bag, so you can decide how you want it to look, but essentially you kind of want things to line up for the most part. So I'm going to try to find an area on the thing that I like for consistency, and then I can actually take and flip over just like this. So what we're going to do here is that's about there. Yeah, I like that, where this is right now. So these are pattern weights. You can literally use anything you have access to just to hold down the thing so it doesn't move around. These I got from the fabric supply store, so you can lay it out. But like I said, you can use anything that will just keep the pattern from moving around. And always just kind of spread out as you're laying stuff out. Here's a chalk, so we're just gonna go around and draw it. Make sure to draw in all of the notches as well. Okay, so that's half of it, and then there's two lines, little holes there, that kind of just marks where the zipper in the exterior pocket will go. The other two we don't need to do until after. Just like that. Okay. We're gonna take flip it up this way, making sure everything lines up, just like this. We'll have Okay, get yourself some nice good shears. So make sure these are nice and sharp. These are meant for cutting out fabric or leather, whatever it is. Definitely a little better than just regular scissors. So because the leather's a little thicker, I recommend trying to find something as sharp as possible. So you want to make sure that you're following all of the lines that we've drawn out. Actually, one thing I realized is that this little notch I drew in after, so we're just going to make sure that that lines up just like that. So I forgot to draw in that notch there, and so I'm just going back and making sure that I draw that in just so you guys can see. These notches will be very important when we're sewing this together. Cool, now we're back on track. Okay, that's one side. Pull this down. That's the other half there. Okay, now just for consistency's sake, you can see that this shape, right, is already kind of following the direction of the line. So we're gonna take the side bottom panel, and because it's already headed in the same direction, we're just gonna cut this out accordingly. And that's the one side there, so you can see. Same thing on this side. Just gonna use this piece here. Okay, so we're going to do the bottom panel here, and this will be the outer side pocket. Now make sure that because this is all going this direction for the body panels here, right? It's going in this direction, so you want to make sure that this pocket is also in the same direction, just for consistency. For any kind of pattern, you definitely want to be remembering things like that. So this one we're going to go like this. Now if you can, try to always cut on a line. You can see here I'm doubling up the line for the bottom panel and the side panel here. Just makes it easier when you're cutting it out that you just have to cut once as opposed to twice. Nice little life hack there. Alright, and to finish off, we're going to do the shoulder pad. And now we're done, son. Alright guys, so next we are going to do the lining. So this is 100% nylon pack cloth. Again, any kind of like structured woven or interior is fine. I just found this, and this is just at a local supply store, so you can get it there. And what's the best way to do this? Will be... There we go. Okay, so the first piece we will cut will be the bottom panel. Now, I know it just says cut one lining, but we're actually going to cut 3 of these, and the reason is when we get to sewing, it actually helps sewing some stuff down because leather likes to stick to stuff. So we're actually going to do 3 of these, and that will make sense once we get to the sewing stage. It all out. Okay, so that's 3 pieces there. And because we have enough room, what we're actually going to do is that we'll draw in another panel as well. So we'll do one of the body panels. It just saves time to be able to actually make this one. Yeah, that's the fun part, is that you can kind of make a little puzzle, a DIY puzzle. So like I stated before, you just have to cut once as opposed to 3 or 4 times. There. So this main body panel we're going to cut twice. This is a cut 2. One of them there. Oh, yeah, you can still see that one. And because we have some more room on this side, we'll draw in maybe a couple of these. So this is the side bottom panel. Make sure to draw in all of the notches. Notches are very, very important, so we'll do the same thing on this side. Now I'm going to stop here and then just cut out what I have. If you want, you can just trace everything out first and then cut after, which is probably the most efficient way to do it. But just because I'm working with a little bit less area. Okay, now that everything's traced out for this section, we're just gonna cut all the pieces out. Remember, like I said, you wanna cut on the inside of the sewing line. One thing to actually remember as well, you always wanna cut along what's called the gray line. So basically you wanna follow the direction of the fabric. If you're kind of laying things out on an angle, the way it's woven together will actually have a play on how it is. Doesn't really matter too much for bags, but just a good rule to remember that you wanna have everything go in the same direction. We'll make sure to trim in the notches. Okay, so there's 3 of the bottom panels. Once again, the 2 extra will make sense once we actually start sewing stuff together. Okay, that's one of the 2 body panels. Okay, so you got these ones, and then you're gonna see that we make sure to mark the 4 little spots for these snaps on the go. And that is it for lining. And we have this as well. Let's move on and finish off with the mesh. The last thing we're gonna cut out will be the mesh. Now what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna fold this in half and then just trace it out once. That way we only have to cut once, as opposed to spend the time and do that once. So you can do that with a lot of even the lining. You can definitely fold it out and cut it out any way you want, but I find this just saves a bit of time. Guess I should go closer to the middle of the frame. That's good. Okay, and because this is 2 layers, I'm actually gonna leave everything on there so there won't be any moving around when I cut everything out. So just go as close as you can to the paper. And because this is mesh, it's okay if it's a tiny bit bigger all the way around, because the idea with the mesh pouch is that you want it to have a little bit of movability so you can
put a couple things inside.
You can tell that's not a very clean line, so I will go back in and fix that. Try to make it as clean as possible. And these are the two mesh pieces, just like that. Alright guys, welcome to the sewing chapter. So this will be probably the most exciting part of the whole graphy because you'll actually see the bag come together. So we're going to do everything on this machine right here. So this is called a walking foot, and it's a little bit different from a single needle because it actually has a little foot there, and that can go on either side. And what it does, it actually helps walk the material along. So for things like leather where it's got a lot of stretch and it's quite thick, it's ideal to use one of these. So we're going to do everything on this machine here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is sew together all of the webbing. So jumping right in, we're just going to turn the machine on. And what I'll do first is create these D-ring loops, just like that. And we're just going to melt these sides here. Sit there. You can see here these threads have kind of come loose, so don't ever actually pull that because you'll actually unravel it. So do a little trim like that. And we're just going to melt the ends here. And we're just going to sew them down. So, one thing to note, before you start sewing, I've actually already set the tension, but you see this knob here? This controls how tight along with the stitch width. So I have mine set to 5 right now, which is basically the spacing for how wide the stitches are going to go, and the tension will determine how tight the thread's going to go. Definitely keep it on the tighter side, but I've got this all set up already, but I definitely recommend testing a few different pieces first before you actually start sewing together your bag. So just make sure to be aware of that before you start sewing right away. Okay, so we're going to do these D-ring loops first. Back stitch a couple, and then we're just going to go all the way along. Same thing here. And down, back stitch a couple, and then go all the way through. Okay, and you can see how these both have a little tail, right? So that's on purpose, so there'll be room for the D-ring to actually have a little bit of strength there. Okay, so this is one of the handles. Okay, so we're going to do the shoulder strap next. So we're going to take your center bar. We're just going to sew that in place. I'm just going to quickly mount these ends here just to make sure it won't come loose. What we'll do here, we're going to loop it through. This. And then we're going to make sure that there's a little bit of room to fold over under here. And we're just going to feed that along. And then we're just going to sew down this tail here. So you can see here, I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch there. I always just like to melt the little excess threads if I have the lighter kicking around, which I always do. Okay, so that's sewn down there. Next we're going to take this, loop it around, loop it over the center bar, just like that. And now you have the option to make this adjustable. Here. And we're going to do the same thing. Just like to get a little extra nut there just to make sure. And then we're just going to fold this over on itself just like that. So you got a little tail there. Just going to sew this down. Always make sure to pull the threads before you sew anything down so you have good tension there. Needle in, back stitch a couple. And I'm just going to put there. Okay, so here we have the shoulder strap and the two D-ring loops here, so we'll put those aside. Okay, and next we are going to sew down the handle. So you remember you actually marked the center point and then the side, the point on either side, just to show the start and the end of the handle. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to start at one of the white chalk lines there. So you can see that little line there. We're going to start there. Put the needle down. So I'm just going to use the edge of this foot here as a guide for the sewing line. Nice and straight. So back stitch a few times. And then we're just going to run sewing all the way down. A few last stitches in by hand and then back stitch a few times just to make sure that's not going to come undone. And that. Okay, so that's one handle done there. We're just going to do the exact same on the other side. And here we have the other webbing handles. So now we have two there. Let's move on. Okay, so now we're just going to quickly get the shoulder strap out of the way. So we have the two pieces of leather there. This is the top where the webbing will slide in under. This will be the top of the pad. This will be the lining piece that goes on the bottom. And a little bit of foam there. So the first thing we're going to do, we're just going to fold this. You see where the two notches are? So we're just going to fold that to meet the notches there. The needle down, we're going to back stitch. Same thing, we're just going to use the outer ridge of that foot there as a guide. And then, one side done, we're doing the same thing, so we're going to fold over. Just going to make sure that these line up the notches so they can stretch out a little bit there. Now, if you want, you can do this in two steps where you sew this piece down first and then you sew it to the lining. I'm just going to do one motion and then just sew it all together. So, totally depends how you want to do it, but I guess I'll show you. If you want, you can just do this first. Do it this way where you do both sides and then you sew that down, but I'm just going to do it once. Same sewing line. So what we're going to do, start here because then you can slide the foam in just like that. So what we're going to do, we're going to start here, make sure everything lines up, We're just gonna go all the way around. So it's called a basting line. A basting line essentially is just a sewing line that just holds some pieces together. Make sure that lines up there. And now that we're here, we're gonna take this. We're just gonna slide it in. There, so now we got lots of room on either side. Go and close this. Set that. Okay. Done. So here is a construction. I think the last thing we'll do is put a little binding strip all the way around and clean finish it, but that we'll do at the end when we close the bag. So that is the shoulder pad there. Alright guys, so the next thing we will construct will be the interior mesh pocket. So you're going to need your 2 pieces of mesh, 2 pieces of lining, sorry, and then your 2 interior zippers here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I remember we marked all the little, we marked where the holes will go for the snaps here. So what we're going to do is we're going to poke that hole and then feed that through here. This is or I guess a snap setter. You can buy the little hand tools that you take a little hammer and then do it by hand. If you're not doing them on a regular basis, I recommend doing that because it's just a lot cheaper. But because I do quite a bit of this, I actually bought this, which is quite handy to have. So essentially it's just, you hammer this down and it'll set it perfectly each time. But again, not necessary. There are other tools you can buy to set the snaps. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to line this up and then just poke one hole so they're exactly the same. I'm taking all. And 4. So now we got these big holes here. And we're just going to have these. So I'm just going to do the good side. How should we do this? We'll do the good side out. So we're going to put this is the bottom, the cap goes in just like that, and we're just going to set all of these snaps. Okay, so that's one there. That is the other side there. Just put this over here for now. Okay, so now that the lining is constructed, what we're going to do is we're going to sew the mesh to the zipper. So actually the first thing I'm going to do is switch the feet around because we want this foot to be as close to the edge of the tape as possible. Now we're just going to attach the zipper. So I'm actually going to loosen the tension just a little bit because this is a little thinner of a mesh material. You actually don't need very much to get along. So actually what we'll do, slow this down so we can just keep everything together. So we're just going to go back to it sometimes just so it's sticking together the whole time, makes it a little bit easier to sew. We want it to open left to right, so this will be the bottom, so we want to go like this, in which case, we'll just do that. So what I'm going to do is take the mesh and then line it up to the edge of the tape here, and then we want this foot to go as close to the zipper teeth as possible. Just remember to not go too close, you're actually going to sew over it, so just go by feel. See here that I'm just following the ridge there, not getting too close so I don't sew over it. And then make sure you don't actually sew over the head as well, so pull that through. And then you can see here there's quite a bit of stretch. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ease this in as I'm sewing. Okay, and then we're just going to quickly run a top stitching line just along the top of the mesh there. We'll just use the outer edge of the inside piece there. So that's one side done. We're just going to do the other side now. Okay, so we're just going to run the sewing line all the way down here. So just go all the way down to the edge. Same thing this time. Okay, next we're going to combine the two. So next thing, we're going to combine the mesh to the lining. So we're going to do good side to good side and then flip it. So we're going to sew it inside out and then flip the right side out so it's clean finish on the outer side there. So we'll start at the corner here. And remember, we drafted everything at 1/4 inch and 3/8. This is nice because this outer edge of the foot here actually ends up being 1/4 inch perfectly from where the needle is there. So we'll just use that as a guide. Anything at 3/8, we'll just have to push it a little bit outside of that. But except for the top we're just going to sew down at 1/8 of an inch, but everything else will be 1/4. So actually what I'm going to do first is to go along. And because this isn't actually helping this guide, we're actually going to use our hand to ease it along. So just carefully go along there, take your time. Okay, so we're just going to walk this bit in my hand, and then this will be at 1/4 inch all the way down there. So we're actually going to pull this in a little bit, just so it lines up. Okay, we'll just go all the way around at 1/4 inch to make sure that's catching everything. And anytime I get close to a corner, I was just using my hand to walk it down just to make sure I don't go over. Okay, so one of them's done. Now we're going to do the exact same thing to the other one. Okay, so now that both of these are done, we're just going to pull the zipper around and we're just going to flip the right side out. And just to make sure the corner's nice and crisp, we're just going to use the edge of a flathead screwdriver. So we're just going to push out these corners there to make sure they're nice and crisp. Okay, so now that these all have been pushed up, we're just going to run a top stitching line all the way around there. The first thing I'm going to do, just so it's easier to control, I'm just going to switch the foot over again on the other side here. And again, I highly recommend this be at a much looser tension, because if you do too tightly, it's actually not going to be that great. Want to massage everything out as far out as it'll go. Now remember there's snaps on the other side of that, so this part I'm just actually just going to walk through with my hand. And then we'll just go all the way around. notice another snap there, so this one is bit by hand. We'll just with that stitch. Okay, so now we have 1 and 2 with the snaps on the other side there. Okay guys, so now we're going to move on to actually sewing the leather. So what we'll do first is construct the outer pockets. So we have the leather, the lining, times 2, and then we have the 2 exterior zippers. So what we'll do right away is switch the foot back to the other side because we want to get as close to the teeth as possible. Okay, so always make sure to have the side that's easier to slide on the bottom. And then we're going to go good side to the bottom of the zipper there. And we want to go, essentially what's going to happen is this. So we're going to go this one to go right to left. Now you can do this 2 ways. I'll show you, I guess, the one. You can run a basting line that'll hold this down before you actually put this one on top, just to make it easier to control. I'm just going to do it all in one motion or one sewing line, but if you want, you can do it in 2 lines if you'd like. Okay, so we're just going to go down, back stitch, and we're just going to make sure everything lines up. And then, like I said, you can kind of feel where the ridge of the zipper is, so you want that edge of the zipper to go as close to the zipper as possible. So we're just going to make sure everything's going along. Just going to do that. The zipper through. And we're just going to go right to the edge there. We're just going to do the same thing to the other side. And then we're just going to run a top stitching line all the way around. You want to make sure you pull this as tight as you can on either side, just so it's nice and crisp. And then we're just going to use that outer edge of the inner foot there as a guideline for the top stitching line. Needle down. I was just going to give it a little wiggle, make sure everything gets tight. Needle down, same thing. Make sure all the corners are lining up. Okay, so now we have the two outer pockets constructed, and now we're actually going to sew them to the body of the bag. Alright guys, so now we are going to take the two outer pockets and then sew them to the body panels. Now, you remember when we were cutting, we actually cut two extra strips, or two extra pieces of the bottom panel. And these will go with the body here. So what we're going to do. Now, the reason why is that because this is leather, it actually likes to stick to the table, which would become problematic while you're sewing. So putting this down underneath it will give it a nice surface to slide along. So that's why we cut those extra pieces out. So we're going to put that here. We'll do one at a time. We're just going to line up the bottom, make sure everything's good. It's good there. It's good there. Cool. And you can see here that there's the center notch, so we're just going to line those up, just like that. And then just as an extra guard, you're going to see that there's these notches here where the webbing will go, so you want to make sure that this point is in between those two. And then we're just going to run a basting line all the way along. So. Now make sure your basting line is less than a quarter of an inch, because if it's not, that actual stitching that's going to be seen. So make sure that you do a little bit smaller. Make sure that this zipper tape is nice and straight, so we'll pull that through. Give it a check down. Pull that. Give it a little bit of room there for that. And we're just going to run a nice straight sewing line all the way down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the outer edge of that inner foot and just make that line up with the edge of the zipper tape here. Now we're just going to follow that line. Okay, so that's one side there. Now we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, so that's the other side done there. So now we're going to sew on the webbing handles. Okay, so now we're going to take these webbing handles, but before we actually do that, we're going to take the pattern piece that you made. You'll remember that you actually marked a little hole on the top there, so we're actually going to mark that in with chalk at the bottom of this, so we'll know actually where the snaps will go. We're just going to line up the webbing with the pattern piece. So we're just going to move that over, right there. And we're just going to match that on all four sides. done. We are going to sew along. So you can see here that there's these 2 notches here. So we're going to make that go on the outer edge. Just make sure just to make sure the threads are all melted. You don't want it to come undone while we're sewing. So you see that just kind of lets go a little bit. Don't breathe that in. Okay, so we're going to make sure that this lines up. Then again, I'm just going to use the outer edge of the foot there, and that would be the guide. Make sure that lines up. We don't want to go over the teeth there, so we'll go right up as close as we can to the edge of that. Now what I'm going to do here is make sure that I go past the zipper tape here because you don't actually see anything below that. So I'm going to walk this last 2 stitches here. We're going to go once just straight up and down, and then we'll just walk to the edge there. And then once it's here, we're actually going to turn this around just to add more stability. So we're just going to go back once more, walk it down, and then we're just going to go one more time. What that does is it just makes it a lot stronger. Just when you think about constant use of the bag, that's just going to wear down over time. So there'll be a snap there to hold that down as well. But just make sure there's much strength as possible. Okay, so you can see that's done there. Now we're just going to do that on all 4 sides. Okay, that's one side done there, so just make sure the handle is all flowing in the same direction when you're sewing this together. Okay, and that is the other side there. Okay guys, so what we're gonna do next is sew the bottom panel to the leather, and then at the same time we're just gonna do the same thing with the lining. So we have the inside lining and then the bottom panel there. So first thing, just combine this. Now it's very important that we make this at 1/4 of an inch. So remember, like I said before, we're just going to use the outer edge of this foot as a guide. And we want to make sure that we sew that at 1/4 of an inch all the way down. We're going to combine the 2 pieces there. Down. And we're going to go 1/4 of an inch all the way down. There, the notches line up. I'm just lining the bottom. So this process where I'm actually pushing in a little bit as I go just to make sure the bottom lines up is called easing. So that's something that you'll do a lot of with leather because it's so stretchy. So what I do is I just like to hold where it's supposed to meet up and then just push my fingers up and slowly ease in that extra material. By the time you get to the end there, it's just going to be perfectly lined up. Okay, you can see here, that's the bottom panel all the way along. We're just going to do the exact same thing. The lining, so we'll take the bottom panel, line it up. I'm actually going to loosen the tension there. Just because this is a lot thinner of a material, so you don't need it to be as tight. Okay, so that's the bottom panel just like this. This is the top panel just like this. So we're gonna lay the lining down first because it's got some slide to it, and then we're gonna sew the zipper down. So just always remember that the leather is facing this side with the zipper pulls, and then the lining is underneath, just so you don't get the zipper mixed up. Now this has got about 3/4 of an inch on either side. We're actually only going to need up to 3/8. So just remember that you can trim it off just like this if you'd like. So that's what I'll do. I'll just trim this off just like this, so we'll know that we want this to be perfectly 31 inches. So if we line it up, go to the end there, yeah, you can see that lines up at 31 inches exactly. Perfect. Okay, so take your time with this. This is a pretty long piece. What I usually like to do is try to make this bag as small as possible as I'm sewing it along. Just make it easier, so just make sure that it's all lined up. So remember, because this is touching zipper, we're actually going to go at 3/8. So what that will automatically do is that 3/8 plus 3/8 will leave a 1/2 inch space for the actual zipper tape. If we do a 3/8 seam allowance. So same thing, we're going to make sure that this edge of the foot is as close to the tape as possible without actually sewing over it. Zipper down, and we're just going to go all the way down, taking our time. And just make sure everything lines up. Now, if you don't want to do this all in one go, definitely if you want, you can run a basting line just on the zipper tape to the lining, just to make it easier when you're sewing this along here like this. But I'm just going to do it all in one go just to save time. Because we're getting close here, I'm just going to pull the zipper pulls through, just so we don't sew over it. So you just kind of give it a little wiggle, so you pass. That's one through there. Just jam it, kind of push it. Okay. So now we're at the tail end here, so I'm just going to pull everything to make sure everything lines up. Looks okay. This is kind of the way I like to do it, to make sure everything will finish nicely. Done. Now, just gonna pull that through. And do the exact same thing on the other side. So here's half of the bag done. And there's still the other side of the tape that we need to sew down. So we're just gonna lay all that and then do the other side. So you can see this gets pretty big and complicated as you go out. So I like to fold things in on themselves and make it a little bit smaller just so it's easier to manage. Okay. We're just gonna do that all over again. now what we're just gonna do, we're just gonna run a top stitching line just along the zipper on each side there. So. I'm using that corner as a reference to make sure everything's pulled nicely. There's a lot of stopping and pulling everything tightly. Just make sure you're doing that. It's nice and consistent all the way down. Okay, wire it tight, and the last one here. Okay, now we're just gonna flip it around, do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay guys, so now that the body panels have been sewed into the lining, we're going to set the snaps. We're going to set these snaps here so they actually go through and attach to the lining. So we have a punch mat here, and we want to make sure that everything is lined up just like that. You can see the little faint mark of chalk there, so we're going to punch one there. Just making sure that it's right in the center. Oh, I want to actually hit the hammer. And then this is going to be in between where the fold and the stitching line goes. Do the exact same thing to the other side. Okay, so that's it for the snaps. Alright guys, so now that all of the holes have been punched, we're just going to set all the snaps. So I'm just going to get my press out. You can use whatever tool you have, and we're just going to go through and then make sure that the cap is facing out, and then the bottom snaps to the lining. Okay, so now all four sides of the snaps have been set. Okay guys, so now that all of the snaps have been set, you can actually go ahead and attach the interior pockets to make sure that everything lines up. That side's good. Everything lines up, so we're all good. So now we're just going to close the bag. So what we're going to do is that we're going to sew the good side of the lining to the good side of the lining, and on the other side we're going to sew the good side of the leather to the good side of the leather. So we'll start with the leather. Same as before, we're just going to sew at 1/4 of an inch all the way along. I want to make sure that the center notches line up, which they do. Great. See here, I'm just going past the basting line, so we want to make sure it gets covered in the sewing line. Okay, so that's done. So the good side of leather is to the good side. We're just going to close the lining now. We're just going to loosen the tension a little bit so that it's line up. Okay, so now you can see it's just kind of this like big weird sausage roll because it's sewn inside out. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull it through. That will flip it to the right side out completely, where it's one big tube. So you can see just like this. And just to make it easier, when we're closing the bag, we're actually going to go all the way around and run a basting line just to the lining. So it's a lot easier to close at the very end. So we're just going to go around and do that right now. So just make sure you pull all the lining through. And make sure you go less than a quarter of an inch because you want this basting line to be hidden. We're just going to go all the way around. So you can see there's some stretching that's happening there, so we just want to ease this just like that. Okay. One side done. Now we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. All right. Now the lining has been sewn to the leather. We're almost there. Let's keep it going. Okay guys, so we're almost at the end here. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna sew down the side flaps with the D-ring loops on either side. So we're gonna jump right in. Now, as mentioned before, because this is touching a zipper, we're gonna sew this portion down at 3/8. But before we do that, I'm just gonna sew down these loops here. And then we're gonna run, I'm gonna have this touch right to the edge there, just for, you know, aesthetic's sake, and hopefully there'll be no interference between the zipper pull and the D-ring. So we're just gonna have it right to the edge there. I'm gonna have about half of this length hanging off, and that is a deliberate tail, just to give it a little bit more room. You know, if the bag's really heavy and you have a lot of stuff in there, you don't want there to be a small chance that the loop itself tears out. So we're just gonna go right there, and then we're just gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. We're gonna go right to the edge there, we'll have the D-ring. That coming out there. Okay. Now we're just going to sew this. We're going to do a good side to good side there. Then we're going to do the lining. Again, if you want, you can do this in 2 steps. So you can sew the lining down first and then sew the leather on top of that. If you're feeling comfortable, you can just do it all in one sewing line. So that's what I'm going to do here. So this is the center notch there, so we just want that to be in the center of the zipper there. And then we're going to do this at 3/8, so it should be just on the outside of the foot there. So sew that down, make sure you pull the threads through. Okay, so that's 3/8 there. So you're going to back this, and we're just going to run a sewing line all the way to the other side there. So making sure that's all lined up there. I'm just going to go all the way along. This portion here, we're actually going to walk by hand because you can hear there the little thump there and actually almost broke the needle. So we're just going to walk that through. Okay, that's one side done. what we're gonna do next is we're just gonna top stitch this part down all the way across, and then we're gonna baste it all the way around at the same time. So we'll do that all in one simple sewing line. So make sure we'll pull this nice and tight, just all the way around. So there's one of the flaps down there, just like that. And we're just going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay. Now you have both sides of the bag sewn down. So what we're going to do now is split the bag inside out. And we're going to close both sides from the inside. Okay, so now that we've flipped the bag inside out, we're just going to start at one corner on each side and then just go all the way around. Now, we'll start here. I always find it's good to have the flat surface on the bottom, just to act as a guide. And then we're going to go 1/4 of an inch all the way around, making sure all the notches line up and everything is nice and flush at 1/4 of an inch. So this point here, we're just going to start and stop there. You can see there's that notch there, so that's going to line up with this piece. We're going to pull on it just a little bit, and then we're going to work our way around. One side done. Okay, so one side sewn and the other side sewn. So the last step, I'm just gonna bind it. Okay guys, we're basically there. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take some binding, close this shoulder pad, and we're gonna close the inside of the bag. So we're gonna use 1-inch binding, so there's a binding attachment here. You can just buy this on any like online eBay, Amazon, that kind of thing. It's just a binding attachment, it screws right to the machine. So that's what these screws are here for. Just want to line it up here. We want to get as close to the edge of the tape there without it actually slipping off. So same as always, I recommend trying to sew with a little bit of extra or scrap fabric before you decide to actually sew down leather, just to test it and make sure everything's lining up okay. I've fortunately used this enough times to know exactly how it will go. Just want to screw that, make sure it's nice and tight. Last thing you want is stuff to be slipping off while you're actually sewing this together. Okay, what we'll do first actually, you know what we will do? Here's this one. there. So we're gonna do the shoulder pad first. Now, what I like to do is actually give it a little bit of a wiggle here. Now, because this is the part that will be covered by the strap, we're gonna start here and then work our way around. So, put that down there, and we're just gonna wiggle the pad out of the way so it doesn't actually sew to the foam, and then we're just gonna make our way around. So take your time. Now it's really important that you're pushing the material to as close as you can to this edge there without actually folding it over, so this binding tape is nice and full, consistent all the way around. So you can see it's already trying to come out. Just a little adjustment if need be. Now, as we get to the end here, you can see that it's going to stop to about here, which will be about the distance it goes. So what I'm going to do is actually trim some off here. I'm just going to fold it in on itself, so that we can get around to the tip there. We're just going to feed that in. Nice clean edge. That's finished there. So that won't actually fray for prolonged use. Just gonna put that down, and that's your shoulder pad. So that's done, ready to go. We're gonna put that to the side. We're just gonna got a fresh roll of binding. We're gonna take that down there, and then just make our way around with both sides of the bag. I'm just gonna fold this in on itself so it's a nice clean line that we start and finish with. That. Oh, okay, so we start there. Same as before, I find it better to have the flat surface facing down, so just make going around a lot easier. And we're just going to spine all the way around. Make sure everything's nice and flat, pushing the material right up against the edge of the attachment here. Slowly make your way around the curve, making sure that it's full and consistent the whole time. Okay, as we get to the edge here, we're seeing that we're getting close to the binding here. So make it nice and clean. Just gonna take this from the joints. Okay, one side done, nice and clean. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. So, for the most exciting part, I'm just gonna flip this right side out. Push all the corners out. Everything looks good, everything looks good. I have the shoulder pad. That goes in. There we go. Your very own leather duffel bag with removable interior mesh pockets. Congratulations, guys. We did it. Well, guys, we did it. Put together our very own leather duffel bag. Just want to say thank you to all of you for following along. This was no easy feat, so go out and enjoy it. Thanks very much, guys. Take care.